That's right. All right. Welcome, everyone. It's Erica Jefferson with Black Women in Science and Engineering, or BWISE. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We have had some technical difficulties, so we are recording this video after our previous one basically dumped us offline, and we'll be posting this online for the replay. So hopefully you'll come back and join us and watch and learn something really important from our highly esteemed and security expert BWISE member, Danyetta Mangana. Okay. All right. Good. And our lovely Chicago director, Leslie McKinney, is joining us as well.
Hello.
Ladies, say hi. So we've had Danyetta on before, so I feel like I shouldn't have to introduce her. But for those of you who have not seen her, Danyetta is in Chicago, and she has an incredible firm in cybersecurity and other things she's going to tell us about before she gets started about tonight's topic. Focused on cybersecurity with offices both in Chicago and Washington, D.C. So Danyetta is not just a BWISE member, she is an entrepreneur, which hopefully a lot of us will aspire to do as well. So without further ado, Danyetta, take it away. Tell us a little bit, give us a nickel tour of Covenant Security Solutions, and then, feel free to jump right on into tonight's topic about ransomware and what we should know about it.
All right. Well, first I want to thank for having me back and BWISE. I feel like I'm at home. I love hanging out, great discussions, great topics. Last time, it seems like every time I come, I bring the problems with me. I don't know, but we're hoping for the third one. We'll make it smooth, okay? So, but back to my company. We've been around in cybersecurity support for about 14 years. And we've both federal, commercial, small business organizations around everything done to protect their information. Our tagline is actually securing your way of life. So the goal of what we do on a day-to-day basis is to look at the people in your organization, the processes you have in an organization, and the technology needed to be able to protect your information and to protect your way of life, the way that you do business and the way that you interact in the digital world and as well in the physical world. It bleeds over between the two. And that's part of what we're going to talk about with ransomware tonight. Ransomware, and in our earlier version, I was explaining to Leslie, is that it's the same as if you look at any of the old Hollywood movies, even some of the more current ones, where you got the poor lady that's tied to the chair, and she's, hoping that her life doesn't end, and someone makes a big demand. They say, you got to bring us so much money, you got to get a getaway car, all of that. This is the exact same thing, but in the digital world. What's happening to organizations, whether they're businesses, large, small, even into individuals, is that when they go out surfing on the web, sometimes it's websites, sometimes it's even advertisements. It can be emails someone sends you, you click on it, and you get a computer software, you get actual software that's downloaded to your machine. And as a result of that software, what it does is it actually locks you out of your machine. And it can either just lock you out from a perspective of, restricting your access to your information, all the way to actually encrypting the data, so that even if you were to get around the software, you couldn't get to the files because they've encrypted it so that you can't read it, you can't do it without being able to get the key to decipher it. So this has been an ongoing issue for a lot of organizations, and how we got connected in doing this was looking at what was going on with WannaCry, which is the most recent version of ransomware that hit about 150 countries. It's done close to, I think the estimates are about 1 billion in damage that it's caused around the world, as well as it affected somewhere around 300,000 or so organizations is the last estimate that was out there.
Now, was this limited to just organizations, or were individual, personal use computers targeted or hit as well?
Yeah, personal computers were hit as well. So long as you were running an older version of Windows, like Windows 7, and you had not patched it, you were susceptible to get this ransomware. And so what happened with a lot of individuals and organizations is that they were actually, let me back up a little bit. One of the good things about this is that it was susceptible, which meant that it was able to utilize a tool that came out of actually stolen tools from the NSA that was called shadow brokers. And so they were the eternal name right here because I don't want to say something wrong for you ladies. There's so many malwares out there. They're actually called Eternal Blue. And so they were able to utilize that to propagate, which means that it was able to go out onto the network and continue to find open hosts places to basically attack to be able to run. So, and I'm trying to say this not to be super technical because I want to be able to allow everyone to understand, you know, what's happening with this and to be aware, because, you know, part of the issue that we run into, and I think is the issue around ransomware, is that people think that, oh, well, it only can happen to an organization. It can't happen to me. It, you know, or gee, I don't really need to know about this because, you know, my, you know, ISP is going to cover this, or, you know what, my, you know, home organization is going to cover this, whatever big company or small company that you're working for. And that's not the case. A lot of this has to do with your individual vigilance, things, how people have traditionally gotten ransomware, not this particular strain with WannaCry, but how people have traditionally gotten ransomware is, you know, clicking on an email. It could be a phishing email. It could be even just going around and clicking on a news article, and some of the news articles on the sides, it got those advertisements, and you click on that. It might be something that looks interesting, and before you know it, you've downloaded ransomware. So a lot of it is really coming down to individuals being vigilant, and understanding what this is, what it means to you, and what to look for when you're out and about on the internet. And, you know, one of the things that we always talk about is that it's a Wild West. You know, this is not like, you know, you think about any type of, you know, organized, civilized society where you got rules and laws, department, the fire department, you've got people out there who are watching over you. We're just now trying to build out that type of structure there yet. A long way in order to have type of place. So it's impressed upon each individual that person, you have to be the person to know, hey, you know what, I just noticed like I got something today in my email, even though we do a lot of screening, probably more than most people do in terms of emails. But I got something today from somebody claiming that, you know, they were Dropbox, but I could clearly tell from looking at the message that, you know, there was a couple of things that were slightly different that I'm like, I've never seen come in on a Dropbox, you know, related email. And so that cued me to go look further and say, okay, yeah, you know what, this is not, you know, the addresses, things like that don't match up. But those are things all of us.
I think I got that, and I did not open it. It said Dropbox, but the O was actually a 0.
Right. Yes.
Is that what yours? Did it have a 0 for an O?
I think it was a 0, and then it had an additional dash on it. So those are, you know, but those are just the little things that happen. And if you're rushing, you know, for the average person, you're just rushing and you say, okay, I have a Dropbox account. Let me click on this. Something that simple, you can end up either with ransomware, which is what we're talking about. You can end up with different viruses. I mean, there's just, it's kind of like, you just never know what you're clicking on. And so you have to be vigilant and have to just pay attention. You know, even with things coming from people, you know, it's like, you know what, well, this person's my accountant. So why would they be sending me an email about, you know, a business deal halfway across the world? Like that doesn't make any sense. So, you know, I would say, you know, and I'm kind of jumping around with some of the questions you were asking me about this, but, you know, the biggest thing is just for us to be individually vigilant. because there's only so much your organization can do. They can have people go out and monitor. You can have, antivirus on your machine. You can have a firewall. But you know what? All of this is they're just tools that help, but they are not the end all be all. That has to still rest on you as an individual to say, this doesn't make sense, or gee, you know what, I'm on this site, and as interesting as it might sound, to find out, click on an advertisement to find, a great way to lose weight in 20 minutes, we all see those ads. It's like, that's too good to be true. But, people click on them. And unfortunately, when you click on them, you never know what's on the other side of that click. So,
as a rule of thumb, you just assume, because I'm guessing there is not any software that is able to monitor and say, hey, this doesn't look like the other 15 emails I got from Danyetta. Assuming there isn't something like that, would you just assume if someone sent you something and you weren't expecting it, probably to contact them before you open it? Or, I don't want to
you hit the nail on the head. I usually say we're in an age where we get so used to talking to each other through our phones and, text messaging, and we want to email, chat. And the reality is sometimes you just have to pick up the phone and talk to that person and say, hey, look, you know what? I got this. Is this from you? Does this make sense?
Right.
And it's the same thing even when you're going around on the internet. You might be on a legitimate news organization site, but if something pops up, no matter how great it may sound or how interesting, or it might deal with something that you're dealing with personally, because they do, with any advertisements, marketing, they're going to, you've been looking at and target something that's, of relevance to you. But you've got to say, hey, you know what, maybe I'm going to do a separate search on this. That's an interesting headline, but I'm going to do a separate search on this. So it's really getting, down to changing our behaviors and looking at, does this make sense, and just verifying. And people get offended, but, you can't do everything by text or chat. Some things require you talking.
Well, what happened in Europe with what was it, the hospitals or whoever got earlier this month?
That was the first sign I think we had globally that WannaCry was, let's say, out in the wild and about to wreak havoc, was in Europe. And it actually was the National Health Service for the UK. They got hit with the ransomware. And, I guess one of the great things is that they did jump into action and notify, all of the centers and hospitals that were part of their network, and let them know what was going on and what a response would be. But they were actually the first to come out. And then afterwards, it kind of snowballed on that Friday. I think it was May 12th. Not too long after them, then, other organizations were coming out and saying, wait a minute, we've got ransomware. We've got, several different things going on. So I think some of the other big organizations that got hit with it were FedEx here in the US. I think it was Telefonica in Spain, Deutsche Bahn. There was several, as well as we were talking. You could be an individual person that got hit with this. And so
just, I understand, and maybe some of the viewers too. So when it hit the organizations, it tied up their information. It didn't penetrate into their users' information. Is that correct?
It would tie up the information they had on their network. So it wasn't just a matter of saying not going into their information. Blocked, it encrypted the information that was on that network that it got onto. So, just going back to National Health Service, for example, they weren't able to access, for example, medical records or files if, the ransomware was on those machines. Now, it doesn't mean that they were able to take the data off, or they were able to, what we call exfiltrate that information. They came out and said they didn't have any evidence of that they actually stole that data and, sold it off on the black market, but it prevented them from using it. And really, that's kind of the point of ransomware. It's not so much that they're out trying to, take the data and sell it, though there are, that's the case, that they're trying to take the data so they can sell it on the black market or sell it somewhere and get money. In the case of ransomware specifically, they're trying to basically hold you hostage and say, until you pay us, then you won't have access to this information.
But also in Europe, didn't they request Bitcoin? That's something we had talked about earlier, right? They didn't request money. They were looking for Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, a form of cryptocurrency.
That's correct. And typically in ransomware, that is the case, that they will be requesting Bitcoin from the users. And we, in our discussion a little bit earlier, part of the reason they're requesting that is because it's very difficult to trace where that Bitcoin is going. And also we were talking a little bit about the value of Bitcoin in relation to, traditional currencies. So if you look at Bitcoin right now, I mean, it's been a bit on the upswing. There's debate about why, but, right now it's actually higher than gold. And if you will compare it to the US dollar. So the US dollar to Bitcoin, I think, was somewhere around 2000 or so. And I think gold is hovering around 12 to 1400. So don't quote me on that. You can go online, but I know that's about the ranges that I remember seeing on that.
So Bitcoin, I know is based on something over the web. If I wanted to make an investment, can I get real cash as a result of betting on the rise of Bitcoin? Like if I buy it today and it goes up 100%, can I actually withdraw and get cash for that?
Well, I'm by no means an expert on Bitcoin, but there's definitely the opportunity, I think, to do that. And I think that's part of the reason why it's utilized, is that it's not go and exchange it for euros. You can exchange it for any currency that's out there right now.
Okay, because it just doesn't seem like it's real money, but okay.
But then remember, Erica, we had the blockchain discussion here in Chicago. So I had asked her earlier, they're talking about blockchain is one of the ways of tracking transactions, so you don't have to do as many, what is it? Even like the equipment. Right. So you don't have to do all that type of traceability. The blockchain will do it for you. And Bitcoin is a currency that goes in there. So I'm like, so does that mean that how is it not traceable when blockchain is supposed to be able to connect all the transactions together? So, and Danyetta, what was your response to that?
I was saying that, they aren't collecting the same type of information on the other end when it comes to getting Bitcoin accounts. So if you were to get a traditional bank account, they're going to want to know, here in the US, we've got social security numbers, your name, your address. They have to have some way to validate that information before you're able to open a bank account. Some places even go so far as to, pull your credit report. So there's a lot of back information that's done in the, I would call, more traditional currencies that are regulated and presently utilized by most nations, where that is not necessarily the case with the Bitcoin. And that's part of the way I think it was designed, was that it was really meant to be universal. It was merely meant to have some level of privacy with that currency. And so, as a result, obviously it's the currency of choice for hackers, because you want that privacy. You don't want someone tracing the fact that this Bitcoin is going to this account and, we're transferring it into, rubles, or we're transferring it into euros or whatever, because then that's a dead giveaway. Okay, well, let's go find this individual, because obviously if they're trying to get US dollars, or they're trying to get, this type of established currency, then we know, we can narrow down where they potentially may be in the world. That's the thing they want at this point. They want to be able to get the money easily, currency they need to, and, pull off the next heist, I guess. So
I mean, for our viewers, we've got folks obviously who are working for organizations, and also they're concerned for their own personal computer. Are the WannaCries impact the same? Of course, it's much magnified for a large organization, but the challenges if you get attacked by WannaCry are the same for businesses as they would be for the folks who did not get that patch?
It is. It's the same. I mean, I think, one of the things that we actually did a white paper on this that was, and you can actually access it on our Covenant, website under the resources and white papers on ransomware. And one of the things I was sharing in that for individuals is that there's just some basic cyber hygiene. There's some basic things you can do to lower your risk in getting ransomware or any type of, I like to call it, cooties or whatever you can get off the internet, just to put it in simple terms. But whatever you can get off the internet, it's not, I don't want to, I hate using certain terms because they mean different things to different people, but this is, it's real simple. And it's just like cyber, and what I'm explaining with cyber hygiene is just like you wake up every morning and you decide, what, I want to keep my teeth as long as possible, so I'm going to brush my teeth every morning. And some people decide to brush their teeth twice a day. And, it doesn't mean you'll never get a cavity. It doesn't mean your gums may never get infected. It just means that we're doing a process to minimize the risk of that happening. And it's the same with cybersecurity. So for both organizations and individuals, that process of cyber hygiene is the same. And, one of the tragedies I think that came out of WannaCry that actually been talked about for years is that most organizations don't practice and individuals don't practice that basic hygiene. It's, a lot of people didn't need to get WannaCry. It was a patch that came out in March. So the question becomes, you can set, patch management up on your home Windows machine and it'll run in the background every night at, 10, 11 o'clock or 1 a.m. in the morning while you're sleeping. So there isn't, it comes down to, taking that time to create the practice of the hygiene of saying, okay, I've got to do patches. I can't just get a computer from, Best Buy, set it up and forget about it. Or, we can't have computers in our organization and we're sitting here with them and we don't have a process to say, what's the critical patch? What's the when do we patch? How do we do this on an often enough basis that we aren't getting slammed with, $1 billion is a lot for something that, quite frankly, had that kind of impact.
Right. And there is no value. It's not like you spent $1 billion to upgrade your system. You spent $1 billion to something you owned anyway.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Part
of worldwide. Worldwide. We basically it was patched. I mean, when it came out and it was known that this exploit was released online due to the shadow brokers, it was something where, like I said, anybody could have just patched their system and said, hey, you know what, let me just do this on a regular basis. But, patching isn't that easy for large organizations. And I do want to recognize that, especially when you deal with legacy systems. There's a reason that so many people were still on Windows 7 because, the latest version of Microsoft is not Windows 7. So, there is a reality that's behind it that, it does take time. It does take a process. And if you're running an organization, your first and foremost is to your clients, to your customers, to your mission in that organization. And it's not always easy just to say, we're going to shut down a patch, because some patches have repercussions that you wouldn't necessarily think about offhand. So, but recognizing that, I think that it's calling our organizations to think about, how do we make this faster? How do we go about looking at speeding up this process? How do we, create systems within our organization such that we aren't left in the dark or left out in the cold when the next version of WannaCry comes out?
Are there like now I'm getting feedback, but are there safe deposit boxes for your important documents? Is there a way to remotely have your data that's not connected to your network that can't be encrypted, or no, that's the whole purpose of things being in the cloud. So you've got kind of one place to go. Is there a way that even if they do encrypt it, you can like, okay, you can have that. I've been saving that in a place you didn't even know about. Is that?
Yeah. And I mean, and actually for a lot of organizations, you know, one of the interesting things with WannaCry is they really didn't make a lot of money in comparison to some of the earlier versions of ransomware that have been out there. And part of that is because I believe some organizations did just that. They made a point to have backups. They had made a point to have restore points in place where, you know, if they got hit, you know, obviously they weren't thinking about specifically WannaCry, but any type of event that would allow them to be able to say, okay, you know what, we, instead of us worrying about this, we're going to bring up, you know, last night from 11 o'clock on, we've got all of our systems. We know exactly, we have our data, and we're able to continue forward. So that is one of the things that we recommend for individuals is to take backups as often as you can. Be able to store those offline, not just online. There's a lot of services that will allow you to do online backups, but I also suggest people do offline as well. So, you know, back it up, and especially for individuals, that's a lot easier to do for, you know, individuals and especially small scale organizations. You can go to, you know, like I said, Best Buy or any of these other, you know, stores out here, and they'll have a little small drive that you can put to your computer, and you back everything off. When you're done, you just set it on the side. So if something happens like this, then, you know, you got a choice. Do I want to pay $300 and just call it a day, which some people do, or, you know what, I've got my data, you know, it's going to cost me a few hours, but I can put everything back to place and keep it going, and I can get the patch and then keep moving forward. So that's the choice, you know, a lot of individuals have to make in organizations, you know, but having that strategy up front and understanding that is a big deal as well.
Leslie, you have any more questions?
I read something recently. It said something about ransomware. Could it be in cars? Is that at all possible that someone could hold you ransom while you're trying to get to your next destination?
Oh, wow.
Anything is possible in the realm of cyber. I mean, I think this kind of gets a little bit to the conversation we had back in February when we were talking about cybersecurity. We are at breakneck speed integrating technology into our lives. And with the advent of IoT, Internet of Things, it is very simple for someone to be able to get into, you know, the software that's running and to manipulate it. And yes, be able to hold you ransom in your car. You know, they might even be able to hold your life ransom in terms of, you know, people are using things like Alexa, and those are recording everything. You know, they record everything. And, you know, and you know, your refrigerator, I'm amazed at the things that are coming out with IoT, getting in and out of your home. People have devices where, you know, you can just come up and, you know, put your thumbprint and get into your house. And I said, you know, sometimes we have to question, you know, does this make sense? And what's the risk that I'm taking on?
Right.
In order to have this convenience. And as cool as it sounds, and as much as I think it's nice to say, hey, you know, Alexa, find me the nearest, you know, I don't know, the nearest gas station to, you know, such and such a point, so I can give this to my cousin who's driving. You know, that's great. And it's a great convenience. And I'm all for us moving forward in that direction. But the question becomes, you know, can we secure it? And can we protect ourselves and protect our way of life and protect our society? And we're finding daily the answer to that question is no. We really don't know how to secure this information to the level it needs to be protected, to protect each other, to protect our lives, to protect our children. We're just, you know, we're connecting everything up, and then we're finding out after the fact that, oh, wow, my phone hacks my computer. Well, you know, what are you going to do with that? You know, or my fridge now knows more about me than I know more about my eating habits than I do. And what does that mean? Is it shared it with my health insurance company? You know, what are the boundaries on all of this? So, you know, it is, yeah, ransomware can happen anywhere. And, you know,
I like what you said about, you know, you have to have some discernment and you have to take responsibility for, you know, the technology that you own. And, you know, I always talk to people who are, you know, maybe not quite hackers, but they're very knowledgeable about hacking and things. And they are almost what they call Luddites. They don't have a whole lot of anything. They don't have their name on things.
no.
I mean, so it's kind of like flying on a plane, you know, and you're sitting behind a pilot in a jump seat or in front of the child. If he gets nervous, then you need to be nervous because he knows what's going on. And the same I feel with security professionals like you. So if you say you don't want Alexa, then I don't want it either because I know you know.
You know, and I mean, I'll be honest, it's nothing against the company. I just think that, you know, for people, you have to really take, like you said, the discernment and think about why. Why do I need this? And what does it mean to my life? And what happens with all of this information? When you go back and you look over the last, you know, 2 to 3 years and how much information people are collecting, what are they going to do with that? And what does that mean to your life? You know, we're talking about ransomware, but you know, what about the people that they hold ransom that were, I think it was a year ago, because this happened right, maybe it was a year or two ago. So much happens in the world of cyber. Sometimes you forget when all these different
Yes, you post a lot of articles on it.
It was the OPM, and I think right after the OPM, they had Ashley Madison got hacked.
Oh,
You know, and they lot of people that got ransomware attacks because they went and found out that, oh, well, okay, well, you're out here and your wife or your significant other doesn't know. Oh, by the way, in order to keep this a secret between you and me, this is what I'm asking for. So can you imagine what's happening with the amount of data we're putting out into the sphere?
No.
You know, we know that you lied to the health insurance company. You really have these issues with diabetes, you know. So, you know, we need to figure, you know, can I hold you ransom because you didn't say the truth about this? So it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But, you know, that's part of the reason why when I talk about cyber, I try and focus more on the people end of it, because it's a choice that we have to make as individuals. It's not so much that the technology is running away from us. We're allowing it. We're going out and connecting up our lives and making decisions without thinking about what does this mean to us, to our way of life, our children. You know, it's great to say the power plant can run all on its own, but should it?
Right. And it seems like it's a one-way flow of data, right? So credit card companies and car companies and health insurance are getting information on you. You can't get any information on what they're using that data for and how they're manipulating it to affect, you know, all manner of things. So it'd be different if you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, now I can go to the website and I can see what Alexa is sending. You can't do that. So, you know, that's never going to be equitable that they're collecting data to sell you or to affect something that impacts you and you can't get anything back. I have long said that while it's wonderful, the invention of a lot of technology, especially in the operational setting, but, you know, anybody who's worked in operations, all our viewers who will see this, who are, you know, former process engineers, production engineers, you know, sometimes things just happen. And if you've got a computer, you know, that, you know, is running things and you need to, you know, turn the water off and the computer is like, no, I still need to fill this tank. And you're like, well, there's people in there, so you can't fill the, the ability to be able to override. To me, that's what's most concerning. How can you guarantee you can override these systems? And if they decide no.
Right now is not really. And I think we're getting more dangerous with the, you know, bringing in of AI, artificial intelligence. because now the computers are now making those types of decisions on its own, and really starting to take the human out of the loop altogether. So, when we talk about these different threats in cyber, I think we're just starting to touch the surface of what this could mean to our society as a whole. Because we're really losing control in some respects.
Absolutely.
And I think there's some that we can argue we're already out of control with the amount of devices that are out there that are interconnected. And some of these devices are now, we really, quite frankly, we can't keep up in the cyber realm a lot of times. They're coming up with things faster sometimes than we can sit down and think about them. And so, that's part of the reason why, at least, my firm espouses, and I think several others do, you really need to have a strategy, you need to have a focus, and you need to have a way that you're looking at risk for yourself and risk for your organization, because you aren't going to keep up. And with blockchain and AI, the machines are doing it. Basically, the machines
here's a plug for companies and why they should hire certainly diverse candidates. Our group is Black Women in Science, so of course we promote Black women, is because we've always had to do the most with the least. And certainly for AI and some of the concerns, who is programming, who's doing the machine learning of these things? It's a 21-year-old, 24-year-old white or Asian person. No offense to them, but their experiences in the world in general are going to be much more limited than those people of color, right? And as an engineer who worked in a chemical plant, we used to say, if you haven't closed the gate for 20 years, you don't know anything. Meaning, if you haven't worked day, night, weekends, holidays, and seen all kind of reasons or, things that happen, how could you possibly know how to run a plan? And the same thing carries over to anything, that AI touches. If it's going to be, monitoring cities for crime, but you haven't programmed the ability for those cameras to detect between skin color, right? There's so many things that I think underrepresented groups, we could figure it out, because that's what we've had to do, right? We've always started behind the line and still caught up, even with someone hanging on to our ankles, right? We still we still beat everyone else, because that's just what we've had to do. And so I hope that, maybe the lack, or maybe I should say it another way, maybe the great opportunities to prevent things from going wrong with AI and things will open up opportunities for diverse populations who bring a different set of eyes, a different set of experiences and thought processes to all of this. I haven't heard anyone yet express a concern that the fact that the folks who are doing the machine learning and data science and all that, because the industry is so young, have maybe 5 years experience. Do you know where you were when you were 5 years out of college? You probably weren't setting a word on fire. You probably were still learning. And so how can we entrust these critical things to someone?
Industry as a whole. And I think, especially I can speak more from a cybersecurity perspective, some of the things we're talking about on this, on this webinar right now, you don't hear a lot of, because, cyber is seen as this technical geek, let's sit down and figure out what's the latest threats. And then we've got these big cyber centers built around the world, and we've got all our geeks in the cyber centers, because that's what's comfortable group. Where the bigger issue with cyber has always been, for me, and I think from a diversity perspective, especially as a woman, is I look at this from a societal perspective. To me, this is about who we are and who we're choosing to be and how we interact with one another.
Right.
Because there's a bigger question that has to be answered. And I think that's part of the reason why it continues to get out of control, and will continue to do so. until we sit back and say, this is about the people behind the technology. It's not about the technology.
Right.
You know, people are using the technology to get to your wealth. They're using the technology to, you know, target individuals. We aren't answering those questions, and we aren't looking at it from that perspective really at all. I mean, we're starting to talk a little bit about training, you know, as a community. But if I were to take you to 10, you know, just at random, take you to 10 cyber conferences, probably 80% of the discussions are going to be about how do I mitigate risk? How do I find risk? You know, how do I find these cyber threats? How do I find the next malware, the next virus? And, you know, how can I, you know, threat detect things that haven't come up yet? And that's, you know, immaterial to some degree. You know, it's important to have that information, and that, you know, I'm not minimalizing it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the bigger picture is, how do we interact with it? How do we have our experience as human beings, as individuals who are users of this technology? How does that play into cybersecurity? And until we can answer that question, and until we're willing to face that question, I think we're going to continue down this road, because it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. There's always going to be a virus. They're always changing things. And without the diversity component of people coming in and saying, hey, let's look at this from a different perspective. My perspective is not your perspective. I'm not going to make a lot of money on the needle in the haystack. What I want to do is keep you from losing your livelihood because that needle showed up in your haystack. And that's a different question.
It's concerning, because I feel like your voice is in the minority of what, you know, companies, organizations, states should be focused on. I know a young lady I met or connected with recently who works with credit card companies or payment processors.
Mm-hmm.
And she says it's frightening when she meets with them, the lack of understanding, you know, of things that should be so basic and critical to their business. And she's like, I don't know how you guys don't get this, you know. And I feel like we're building technology faster than we can really comprehend it. I think
that's absolutely true.
If you've ever driven with your high beams, have you ever driven with your high beams and you end up driving faster than the lights can show you to go? That's how I feel it is with technology. We're going so fast. You know, we haven't had a chance to look at, you know, what impact that is going to have. And that's why you have, you know, smart but evil people come up with the ideas for ransomware.
Yes, absolutely true. I think we built it and didn't think about the ramifications of what we built. I think we made some assumptions based on how things work in the physical world and assumed that's how it's going to work in the world of cyber, and it doesn't. Just something just as basic, you know, an example that has been talked about for well over a decade in cybersecurity, and that's identity. How do you know who you are online? We can't even solve that basic problem. And if you don't know who you are, we were talking about it earlier with Bitcoin. That's the whole reason you use Bitcoin, because you can't tell who I am. You don't know who I am. And, you know, we take for granted. If I'm sitting here and I met, you know, Erica or Leslie on the street, you know, my mind, whether I'm conscious of it or not, it's taking 10,000 data points. You know, I see how you look. I see how you hold your head. I see that you wear glasses. You know, it's more than just the physical attributes. You know, we're taking in thousands upon thousands of data points. You translate that into the non-physical, which is what the cyber world is. And we're not taking anywhere near that. I mean, we've got three things where, you know, we call it multi-factor authentication, which means that I know I might take your username, your password, and you may have a PIN code. You may have some little, a lot of people had those secure IDs where you go and type in the random code that comes up. You know, we're trying to figure out, how do I tie what I physically see to what happens in the cyber world? And that's been over a decade just to get that basic question answered. And we don't have an answer to that. That's why even now, I mean, you can go out now and no one can tell you who did WannaCry. Well, you got a lot of estimates. Some people say it was North Korea. Some people say it was the Chinese. Some people said, it's the Russians. I mean, it's been all over the place because it's extremely difficult to tie identity.
Well, are there just as many people in cyber like anticipating things like WannaCry? Like that's my comforting thought at night that yeah, WannaCry happened, but there are teams or organizations of people who are like, oh, okay, now we got to focus and make sure this doesn't happen again. Are there?
I wish I could tell you that.
Sleep well tonight.
There are teams of researchers. There's definitely researchers worldwide. There's people that spend days, hours, looking at this, getting ahead, thinking about it. But the reason why these things continue to persist is that it's more infrastructure problem from my perspective. It's kind of like if you look at a city and you've got a bridge or a building. If the foundation is weak, it doesn't matter how well you set up the rest of the building. If the foundation is weak, over with. You might as well as I was like they used to have some show about buildings, and they had a demolition of some building in Texas. They spent millions of dollars building it, and the foundation is wrong, and that's part of the issue with cybersecurity. The foundations, the software, the hardware, all the things that make up the internet itself. A lot of it was not properly engineered for the risk we see today. It was not engineered to take into account identity to the level that we needed. It was not engineered to take into account, access control, various different levels that we need. In essence, what majority, I would say, your product and software companies are doing back in retrofit. We're kind of propping up the power of people. We're trying to say, okay, if you put a counterweight here, and you add a little concrete in over here, that'll keep this building from falling over. And for the next, 100 years, you can still enjoy this leaning tower. But, heaven forbid earthquakes can do ransomware. To viruses, to people actually hacking into your network and doing deliberate damage. So that's the state that we're in. We just don't have that infrastructure. I don't think we've ever really truly invested in it. People have to get educated to start demanding it. And saying that I'm not willing to do cloud service. I'm not willing to with your ISP. I'm not going to buy your software unless you can show me a certain level that my product is being protected, that my business is being protected. And without that kind of push, it looks like a double-edged sword. We keep putting out things that don't have the capacity to shore up the infrastructure the way it needs to be. That makes sense. You're looking like
it does. No, it does. It does. I'm trying to make sure that we're hearing all that because the camera keeps switching back and forth. So I hope everyone heard all that. It was constantly switching back between you and me, even though I was just sitting there not making a sound. So
there was a lot of feedback.
I heard it. A lot of feedback.
There was at that time. Yes.
Okay, that's weird because I'm just sitting here quietly.
I said we're the power people when it comes to cybersecurity infrastructure.
See, it's doing it again. Well, I'm looking at the clock. I think we've got maybe about 5 or so minutes left, and so with that, hopefully we can get it to. If not, maybe my voice is loud enough that I could repeat what you say if it doesn't pick you up, Danyetta. But would you give us some parting thoughts, both for those of us who, are maybe managing, because I've got, computer science and computer engineers and BWISE as well. And, as an expert, you may be more knowledgeable, but about even these things, since I know you keep a pulse on the industry. So would you like to give us, maybe 1 or 2 final thoughts or suggestions for both folks for their professional lives, for people who may be managing data centers, and also for at home and securing your own personal data for your family?
Okay, well, my final thoughts are just going back to the topic. We touched on a lot of things. Our main topic was ransomware. My goal would be for people to come up with a strategy, especially for organizations. And the larger you are, the more critical it is that you have a strategy as it comes to protecting information and protecting the people connected to your organization, whether it's your clients or your employees or your supply chain members. You have to have a strategy for it. So that strategy on, clear process. And I mentioned earlier about cyber hygiene. Consistent set of things that you're doing in the organization to ensure that you have a pulse on incidents happening. How do you respond? The organization as a whole has to have a methodology, something in place for how you respond. And, that's one of the things I continue to see when these events happen, is that there doesn't seem to be a strategy around how we respond. And it almost seems like people seem to be caught off guard. Oh my gosh, you got ransomware. Well, guess what? I'm going to give you a prediction. You've got almost 100% chance of getting ransomware again. So take the opportunity to really think about what's that strategy. What are those things that we're going to do on a consistent basis to try and prevent? But then when it does happen, how do we communicate with suppliers? How do we communicate to the media? Manage through the inevitability that we're going to have some, ransomware is going to hit ransomware, we're going to have a breach, something's going to happen inside there. For individuals, I would definitely say do those basic things that we discussed earlier. Take the time, set them up on automatic. If you burn a firewall, get a firewall in place. There's lots of vendors out there that have firewalls that aren't very expensive. I know that there's some free ones. I'm not always 100% on those, but definitely do your research. Have some really basic things in place for yourself at home that allows you to do your machine to do some screening and to do the updates that you need to do. And then thirdly, and most importantly, what we talked about throughout this is have the discernment. Take the time to really look at what's coming in, understand what's going on, keep yourself abreast of what's happening. Take time to get educated. There's blogs out there. We actually at Covenant, we have a blog. We're on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I know both of you ladies like some of the articles we do from time to time, but we put them out so that people can stay educated and know what's going on, understand what's happening, so that maybe it hasn't hit you personally yet, but you can stay ahead and say, this is coming out. It's been reported on, and I can take these steps to protect myself. But the biggest thing is to stay consistent with that and to keep your eyes and ears open and to look at things and question. Never hurts to pick up the phone. People probably want to hear from you anyway. So, with that, that's some of the basic things I think people can do. And if they need any help, definitely feel free to contact us at Covenant. We'll be happy to help you think through your strategies for organizations. And then we have lots of training that we're offering for individuals.
So. Well, thank you, Danyetta.
Danyetta, you want to give them the viewers a way to contact you if they have questions or hopefully hire you and Covenant Security Solutions?
Yes, they can reach us. We have our website is www.covenantsec.com. That's COVENANTSEC.com. Our phone number, our main line is 824-8022. And you can reach out to us, let us know what's going on. If you need any help, we also have trainings. Like I mentioned, we have 2 executive leadership classes that we're hosting right now. One that's going to be centered on leadership and governance, and basically the same thing we talked about today about strategy, how to look at cybersecurity from a people perspective. And then the other one is more basic. So if people are just getting into this and know more and educate themselves, a basic cyber class that gets into what these threats are and what are some of the things you need to think about. So hope to see you guys and stay connected.
All right. Well, Danyetta, as always, you're a wonderful, valued member of BWISE. We thank you again for taking time out of your evening to spend an hour with us and telling our members and our guests and our viewers more about ransomware. I know you read it and you see it on the news, but how much do you really know about it? So thank you for being that source of information for us. And I know we'll have many, many other topics regarding cybersecurity that will hopefully get you back on the show. So thank you again, as always, for being a wonderful guest and member of BWISE. Thank you to Leslie for being a wonderful host and director of BWISE Chicago, as always, and co-host and technical whatever guru for this show. Lord knows we've had a lot of challenges tonight. So we will be loading this up for everyone's review, since we haven't been able to broadcast live and take questions, but certainly Danyetta's given her information. So with that, I will say goodnight. I'll let everyone say goodnight, and we will see you guys next month. I guess it's June, so maybe July. So we'll give you an update on our upcoming BWISE career chat. So with that, I'll say goodbye to you, ladies. Right. Bye, ladies. Bye, BWISE. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.